we'll continue reading this, how nature is more valuable if it's just left as nature report. It's fine. It's kind of like the biggest no-duh. We sent out a team of scientists to study this thing that was completely, totally obvious, but, good for them. And now it's peer-reviewed. So that means it's real. Anyways. It suggests further modifying nature for human use could be costing society more than it benefits it. But these natural capital costs are often not taken into account by decision makers. Those decision makers making bad decisions. It echoes the findings of a landmark review released last month by Professor Sir Partha Dasgupta, the Cambridge economist, which warned that the failure of economics to take into account the depletion of the natural world was putting the planet at extreme risk. But carry on, decision makers, carry on. For the last study, scientists worked out the annual net value, here we go, of the chosen sites if they stayed nature-focused, compared with an alternative non-nature-focused state over 50 years. They valued each ton of carbon as worth $31 to global society, a calculation generally considered to be quite conservative. More than 70% of these nature-rich sites were found to be worth more in net economic benefits to people if they were left as natural habitats. And all forested sites were worth more with the trees left standing, according to the paper published in Nature Sustainability. This suggests that even if people were only interested in money and not nature, conserving these habitats still makes financial sense. If only the entire way that the world works, the way that the entire global population of the planet agrees that everything has a dollar value and that money is more important than nature, even if that were true. Oh, wait. Researchers found a salt marsh called Hesketh Outmarsh on the Ribble Estuary in Lancashire was worth $2,000 a hectare in mitigating carbon emissions alone, which was greater than any money that could be made from growing crops or grazing animals on it. Well, there you go. It just makes sound economic sense, and that's why we should do it. Many ecosystem services are still not easily evaluated economically, and the results are likely to be conservative estimates, researchers say. This analysis assumes that carbon is properly accounted for, but even without taking into account the value of carbon, natural sites are still more valuable 42% of the time when left as they are. Only 42% of the time, really? People mainly exploit nature to derive financial benefits, yet in almost half of the cases we studied, human-induced exploitation subtracted rather than increased economic value. We need some economic value for our nature, otherwise we won't care. Yeah. Do you like my song? Do you like it? Anyways, really great study. Totally, really necessary and conclusive. But I guess, whatever. Kevin Shanholzer says, unfortunately, the untouched nature will not be preserved. If you can't wrap it in plastic, it's not worth keeping. True that. All right, seems I have got a tip on Rockfin. Amanda Staniforth, thank you for the $2. The super tip, Super Ray on Rockfin, thank you so much. Black Crow says, apparently we have a beef farm buyout program in the Netherlands, and it's pretty popular among farmers. Interesting. So they like getting the money for not raising beef anymore. Is that what I'm led to believe there? Amanda Staniforth says, when people in our culture start dying in droves, maybe nature will be seen as more valuable when it's too late to save it. Yes, totally. Pink Floyd was way ahead of their time. Did they get you to trade hot air for a cool breeze? Way ahead of their time. Nasmanabs, Madagascar. Yes, that's good. I like it. Madagascar. Well, I don't know what the upshot of this. Do you think that the decision makers are going to go, maybe we should save this nature. Maybe we should stop plundering the planet. Maybe we should stop extracting the wealth of the planet. Maybe we should stop dividing up the planet and selling it off in parcels to the highest bidder. Maybe we should stop encouraging people to buy more things. Maybe we should stop insisting that the rest of the world catch up with the Western standard of living. Do you think they're going to do that? You think that's just around the corner? Yeah. Oh, this is an interesting article from Go Green retweets this. Diseases evolving to become resistant to antibiotics is a hidden threat to humanity as dangerous as climate change. An expert says antimicrobial resistance, is the new climate change. Let's look at this very quickly. From youractive.com. No, you're active. Antimicrobial resistance is the new climate change. This is also from yesterday. Diseases evolving to become resistant to antibiotics is a hidden threat to humanity as dangerous as climate change. An animal health expert has told Euractiv, warning that more must be done to reduce the use of antimicrobials in agriculture. You know, all the things that they're selling you to fight against coronavirus, the antimicrobials? Yeah, those things. Guys, douse yourself in antimicrobials every single day so you don't die. Oh, wait. The World Health Organization has listed antimicrobial resistance as among the 10 biggest global threats. Yet, despite the danger, the issue is hardly on the public radar, according to Edgar Garcia Manzanilla of Ireland's Agriculture and Food Development Authority, TGASC. Much like climate change, it is something that is happening, but because you don't see it immediately happening, much like climate change, it's very difficult to make people react against it, said Garcia Manzanilla, coordinating expert of a recent report on the reduction of the use of antibiotics in poultry farming. Hatcheries cleaner than hospitals. The EU's flagship food policy, the Farm to Fork strategy, aims to reduce overall EU sales of antimicrobials for farmed animals and in aquaculture by 50% by 2030. Strong goals. But meeting this target, and I'm joking when I say that, but meeting this target is becoming a challenge for sectors that have already picked off the low-hanging fruit. According to Garcia Manzanilla, the poultry sector has already decreased use of antibiotics by up to 90%, making the sector a reference point for others. This even includes hospitals, he added, claiming that a hatchery is cleaner than a human hospital without any doubt. However, progress in this area is becoming more challenging. We've seen huge reductions already. The problem is the more progress you make in this area, the harder it becomes to reduce further. All EU countries will be required to measure the use of antibiotics at the species level by 2027. But Garcia Manzanilla said that would be too late to meet the current target. You missed it. You also have to consider that when you are fighting bacteria, they are completely dependent on temperature. So in Finland, when you have 6 months below zero, it is much easier than in Italy or in Spain when most of the year is above 20 degrees Celsius. Anyways, that's happening, but we know that's happening. It's not new news. Moving on to this from today. U.S. urged to cut 50% of emissions by 2030 to spur other countries to action. This is urged by the UN, I believe. Biden administration is set to unveil a new greenhouse gas reduction target at a climate meeting on Earth Day, April 22nd. The U.S. needs to commit to slashing its planet heating emissions by at least half by the end of the decade to address the climate crisis. So that's over 10% every single year. And in the coronavirus lockdown pandemic year, well, globally, we had a 5% reduction. I don't know what the yearly reduction was for the U.S. Probably around the same. I don't know. I'm just guessing. So how are we going to double that every single year for the next 10 years to only get to 50%? If we're supposed to be at net zero really, really soon. I'd like to know what the map is. I'd like to know what the map is. Seriously. How are you going to do it? How are you going to do it without some big old degrowthing? Big fat degrowthing. Joe Biden's administration is set to unveil a new national emissions reduction target at a climate meeting it has convened with other major economic powers on Earth Day, April 22nd, which it hopes will galvanize countries that are currently dangerously lagging in efforts to stave off disastrous climate change, including the United States of America. A motley selection of environmental groups and leaders have said the U.S. goal must be no lower than 50%, a 50% cut in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 based on 2005 levels. So that means more than 50%. That's you got that? You got that magic accounting there going on? 50% cut based on 2005 levels. You know, what's happened in the last 15 years? Pew. Okie dokie. Or is that lower? If they're basing it on 2005 levels, is that not 50%? Because we have definitely grown our emissions in the last 15 years. So is that giving them an out? Does that really mean 30% or 25% or 35%? What does that mean? I'm not sure. This will, the groups argue, put America on track to meet Biden's aspiration of net zero emissions by 2050. Totally. This will, as well as provide a major push to countries and businesses that were bereft of American climate leadership during Donald Trump's presidency. The target has to be ambitious enough to show U.S. leadership, but also credible. It can't just be plucked from thin air, said Nat Keohane, Vice President for the International Climate at the Environmental Defense Fund. This is ambitious, but also feasible. We need to show the U.S. is bringing everything it can to this fight. How is it feasible, though, Nat? I'd like to know. How is it feasible? Are you talking about changing out our power grid, or are you talking about degrowing our entire economy, degrowing our consumption, degrowing our emissions use, degrowing population, degrowing, everything about everything that we do. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you just talking about building some solar farms? Because the last part ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. A new EDF report calls for the whole of government effort to combat the climate crisis, with all cars sold in the U.S. to be zero emissions from 2035, a clean electricity standard to shift the grid to renewable energy sources such as solar and wind, and new regulations. This sounds like it ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. These are all just turning the knobs a little bit. We're gonna adjust the knobs a little. It's gonna be fine. Other environmental groups, including the Union of Concerned Scientists, World Resources Institute, and National Resources Defense Council, have also rallied to the idea of a 50% cut, along with figures such as Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington, and Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City, as crucial to curb ever-worsening wildfires. Okie doke. Curb ever-worsening wildfires, floods, and heat waves that are suffered disproportionately by undeserved Americans of color. We see this important opportunity to bolster equity and fairness, said Starla Ye, a clean energy policy specialist at the Natural Resources Defense Council. The goal is not only achievable but cost effective. The more progress we make this decade, the better off we will be. I'm raising an eyebrow at the wording of this, just because it's like, well, okay, that's the reason why we should do this, because people of color are impacted, not because we might not have a livable planet in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years for everybody on the planet. The arguments are true on some levels, but also just, how about, the entire planet will be an unlivable dead rock. How about that as a reason? Bolstering equity and fairness sounds like a way to say, like, well, we need to raise the standard of living worldwide before we even cut emissions. That's why they're saying that, which means that is another magic accounting shell game kind of thing that they're trying to do. Right? I totally agree that equity and fairness is great. We need equity and fairness. And disproportionately, people of color and poor people of color are affected disproportionately by climate change. Totally true. Totally true. But that whole gambit, that whole framing is a way to kind of not really actually deal with certain issues and make it all about, this one idea. Rather than really just get at the root of the problem. But, I'm fine with all those goals. I'm just, the wording is a shell game. The wording itself is a shell game. And maybe they think that that's going to, make people more interested or more concerned. But, again, billions of people dying, it's kind of important too. The U.S. first set an emissions reduction target known in diplomatic jargon as a nationally determined contribution in 2014 during Barack Obama's administration, vowing to cut emissions by up to 28% by 2025 on 2005 levels. So again, the 2005 levels, hold on one second. I'm going to take a break from this article. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I don't know why this is doing this. Stop it. All right. I love when my buttons freeze. Right, Basil Peterson. Trying to make ecocide an international crime when the U.S. doesn't abide by the IPCC. Right. Yeah, that whole thing too is weird. We're gonna start going out and calling people, shirkers of their climate duty. The United States of America is gonna go around and start telling people what they should do with their about climate change. We're going to go out and be the enforcers of climate change rules, right? But anyways, hold on. I want to find this out real quick. Maybe I can see a graph. Maybe somebody can give me a graph. That doesn't seem very right, but maybe it is right. I don't know. Well, it looks like carbon dioxide in the U.S. has actually gone down a little bit, carbon dioxide emissions. So, let me correct myself. Because I didn't know that. Worldwide carbon emissions have gone up. Definitely. In the last 15 years. But maybe not in the U.S. So here was the 2005 level here. We've gone down a little bit. But everything has kind of stayed in line. Methane, nitrous oxide, and the rest have stayed kind of constant. Okay, interesting enough. Had to fact check myself. Anyways, 2005 levels. So, okay. The target by itself does not lower emissions, but helps set federal government policy and provides a framework for businesses, cities, and state to work towards. So it's not a... So it's just a target. It's just like, we should do this. It's not a definite, there's no resolve behind it. Behind that one, the Obama target. A 50% reduction by 2030 would be, quote unquote, a challenge, according to Nathan Holtman, who helped design the Obama era goal, but would be achievable with a whole of society approach. What does that mean, whole of society approach? You mean if we degrowth society? Because, just retooling our electric grid and keeping our economy, even if our economy just was steady state from right here, like didn't grow at all for the next 10 years, ain't no way we're getting a 50% reduction. Not possible on any level. The international credibility of the world's second largest carbon polluter was severely damaged under the Trump administration when the U.S. pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. U.S.'s return to the international fold has come with added expectations. Huh. Anyways, over under on actually meeting that goal. Over under on actually meeting that goal. How much should our emissions drop in the US just in 2020? Let's see. Let's find out. So they're saying in CNN, US carbon emissions fell 10% in 2020 because of the pandemic. It's up to Biden to stop them from bouncing back. Okay, so we're going to take this at face value that US carbon emissions fell 10% last year. By comparison, the 2009 economic recession caused emissions to drop 6.3%. So we need a pandemic every single year for the next 10 years. 9 years. We need a pandemic style lockdown every single year for the next 9 years. Or something equivalent to reach this goal. Because it's all about stopping the activity, right? The reason why emissions dropped so much during the pandemic is not because we did anything, we didn't do the correct things. Because we didn't intentionally try to lower our emissions. Everybody just stopped doing stuff. We just stopped doing all the things. And nobody is messaging people saying like, hey, the only way we're going to drop, really hit these targets is if people stop doing all the things economically. And so it would be really great if if the leaders of the world or the scientists of the world or if the climate leaders of the world would convey this, communicate this to the regular Joes. Hey, the only way we're going to really actually fight climate change is if we all stop doing what the hell we're doing. Black Crow says, what was the decline in the economic level? So if it dropped like 80% and only 10% less emissions. I mean, those are valid questions, right? But I think the equation you should be looking at more is it dropped 10% over the whole course of the year. And, economic activity dropped by 80% for like 3 months. Prior to the pandemic, we had, full steam ahead. Post 3-month lockdown, the most severe lockdowns, we kind of inched back, right, to things ramping up to doing what we were doing before. So what was the economic level, for the entire year, right? How much did it drop? Averaged out for the entire year, what would it have been? We got 20 watching on Rockfin. That's super cool. Yeah. D-Truth says, I came here to cheer myself up. It doesn't seem to be working. My apologies. Human Love Solidarity says, 1, truth. 2, zero carbon. 3, citizen assembly. Gene says, Scientists are watching a new bird flu develop in chicken farms that is much more deadly than the current one. Oh no. Oh no. Let's see. Where are we? Where are we? Taiwan is facing a really serious drought. Taiwan president asked residents to prepare for water shortages as the island faces worst drought in 56 years. Cloud seeding enforced. Huh. Enforced. What does that mean? We're enforcing the cloud seeding. You guys better be cloud seeding, or we're gonna write you up a ticket if you're not cloud seeding. What does that mean? It's weird. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has called on residents to conserve water and prepare for shortages as the island faces a drought. Taiwan did not experience a typhoon in 2020. Typhoon Taiwan, and faces its most severe water shortage in 56 years. In a Facebook post over the weekend, Tsai said that Taiwan did not experience a typhoon in 2020 and faces its most severe water shortage in 56 years. The government is monitoring water conditions throughout the island. I want to see what's going on with this cloud seeding is enforced. Tsai said that in her post that a military transport aircraft was dispatched to carry out cloud seeding over the Ximen Reservoir in the north, one of the largest water catchment areas in Taiwan. So they are ramping up the geoengineering cloud seeding / cloud seeding. We got to make it rain, literally. The reservoir is currently only at 49% storage capacity. Other reservoirs on the island are also at alarmingly low levels, with Taichi Reservoir at 10% capacity and Sengwen at 15% capacity. Wow. Taiwan's industries are bracing for potential disruption due to the water shortage. Climate change just disrupting all manner of things. If the water shortage disrupts Taiwan's semiconductor sector, it could potentially have global ramifications as the industry faces a chips supply crunch due to a spike in demand for consumer electronics like smartphones, tablets, and PCs last year. Uh-oh. The chip shortage is particularly prominent in the auto industry, where car makers are expected to lose billions of dollars in earnings this year. So far, the water scarcity has not had a major impact on production. So I guess you need a whole bunch of water to make them semiconductors.